Okay, so you're now seeing some of the power on process of our wireless LAN controller. I'm in through the serial interface for this wireless LAN controller. You can see it's booting up as we go. And you can see it's asking me, would you like to terminate auto install? I'm going to go ahead and type yes here. Let's go ahead and terminate that. Let's not do that. It's now asking me for a name. So I'm going to say wireless LAN controller lab, because this is my lab 2. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and name that. And then enter administrator username. Don't do this at home. Put in the correct one. I'm going to just use that. I'm going to use my password. It's going to ask me to re-enter it just to make sure I got it right the first time. All right. Now it's going to start with the different configurations. We're going through the actual wizard, the actual configuration of a wireless LAN controller being turned on for the first time. So it's asking me, do I want to enable link aggregation? Now, if you remember from your lessons, link aggregation was for those ports on the wireless LAN controller. Do we want them to act as a single unit? Remember, if we do that, the other side of connectivity also needs to be configured for link aggregation. I am not going to set up link aggregation or ether channel bundling if you're from the Cisco world, but this is link aggregation, that protocol. But we're taking multiple links and moving them together. Next, it's going to ask me for a management interface IP address. So here I'm going to put in the management IP interface address that I want for this particular device, which is 10.0.0.235, meaning if I go to a browser and I put in 10.0.0.235, I'm going to pull up this device, meaning SSH 10.0.0.235, then the port number will bring up this device. So I'm going to go ahead and press enter. Net mask is 255.255.255.0 for this device. You guys should all know what that means by now. Management interface of the default router. So where's my default router at? It's right there. Go ahead and put that in. Cleaning up provisioning SSID. So what management VLAN identifier do I want to use? So let's jump out here, okay, to a very complex configuration that I have on the slides. Okay, so now you can see there's a lot going on in this environment, right? If we look at the backbone, we have the backbone switch 172.16.02, all these. We have access VLANs associated with that. And then we have a trunk VLAN to the backbone router, okay? Then we have a trunk VLAN that goes down to where? Where does that trunk VLAN go down to? Well, let me find my pen and I'll show you. Here it is. So that trunk VLAN goes down from this backbone switch into the switch pod X, right? And the switch pod X is where what? This is where our wireless LAN controller is configured. We're here in this environment. So we need to configure trunk access there to that switch port. No problem, right? We already did that. We already have a switch config. Now we're working on the actual configuration. So when it's asking for a VLAN management, in this environment, it's X something. So it'd be 11 or 12 based on the pod you were in your Cisco class, right? If you were sitting in a class. But this is our online class. We're just looking at this together. So it can be anything we want it to be, as long as it's predisposed to be our management VLAN. That's what it's asking for here. It's saying, what is our management interface VLAN? 0 is untagged. So if this was our class environment or some other environment, and we were in pod 1, it would be 1, 1, because X was our pod number, plus ended in 1. Let's take another look at that to make sure you guys are on board. For configuration here, that's what we'd see. And that's the IP network of 192.168.11.0. Now that doesn't match up with what I chose, is it? Does it? Not at all. Because my environment's a little different than what you saw in the lab. But for our management interface VLAN, this VLAN has to match our management IP interface. So I'm going to go ahead and press enter here. Management interface port number. What are we going to use for our management interface port number? I'll just use 1. Management interface DHCP server IP address. So where are we getting our DHCP information from? In my environment, that is the same place as the router. Virtual gateway IP address. Now, this does not have to be within the same IP range that we saw earlier. This is a virtual IP range. Okay, now by default, this is a 192 number. Now, by default, this is a 192 number. It's 192.0.2.1. That's the one by default. If you were setting this up through the web client, through some type of web interface, this is what you'd see. Let's stick with that for this environment. Multicast IP address. This is the IP address that allows wireless LAN controllers to communicate with each other. In this environment, let's see what they have us put it at. Well, they don't have it listed here. In this environment, they have us put it at 239, 100, 100, 92. Press enter. Do I have a mobility or RF group name? Lab. Network name. What is the SSID of the network we're creating? I'm going to use, let's see if they have something in our environment for what they said would be. Nothing's listed, so we can name it anything we want. What do we want to list it as? Let's list it as Wireless Lab 1. Do we want bridging mode? No, we don't want bridging mode. Allow static IP addresses. So do I want static IP addresses within my environment? The answer is no. Configure a radius server now. If you have a radius server in your environment, this is where you would do that configuration. In our environment, we're going to keep it simple for this first configuration. We'll do radius servers later, so I'm going to go ahead and click no. Entry a country code list. We are in the US. I'm going to go ahead and hit that. Enable. So what it said was, wait a second. Wireless LAN security best practices is to have a radius server. You're freaking me out here. No worries. We're going to show you how to do a radius configuration later. Right now, we didn't configure that. But it asked us for a country code. For a country code, we listed US. And now it's going to start talking about what we're going to enable our bandwidth. So 802.11b, no, I don't want that legacy one on this. No, I don't want A. Enable auto RF, yes. We'll go ahead and enable auto RF. Configure an Ntp server now. Do I have a time server? I'm going to go ahead and put no. Configure the system time now. Let's go ahead and say yes. Or no. Let's go ahead and say no. Now this is yelling at me because NTP is an incredibly important part of the process. I'll show you how to do that later. We won't do IPv6 now. We'll show you how to do that later. Configuration is correct. System will save it. Yes. So that's part of the wizard process. I know we sped through some things, but this is the wizard for configuration through the CLI. You can do it through a web browser in many of them, through the Express setup. And we did that a little bit before. Check out that lesson if you missed it. So this allows us to configure our wireless LAN controller completely out of the box. I hope you had a good time with this configuration.